was right there to help companies start getting licenses. We were also the first state to allow adult use. Prop 64 regulate marijuana like alcohol. We passed that in 2012. First stores opened January 1st, 2014. It's almost a decade ago that we've owned recreational cannabis stores in Colorado. Did everything go to shit? Colorado's still awesome. We have more jobs, less minorities in prison, less problems, less alcohol consumption. So we've definitely learned some lessons of what not to do. By 2014 then, seeing that the feds didn't raid us, we started working in many, many other states. And then by 2014 with Canada, started working there, then Germany, then Denmark, and now over 40 states, 40 countries we've worked in. So have been around, seen lots of companies from cultivation to manufacturing, retail, the internationals that have EU GMP compliance and GACP compared to state regulations in Oklahoma, which, let's just say some of those aren't the best laws state by state. So, Blades of Glory. Two rivals that were skating, and they got in a fight, and they got kicked out of the Olympics in their class of skating, male single skating, couldn't do it anymore. One went out to be a burnout, the other was tying some shoes, and all of a sudden they realized there was a little change in the regulations that would allow them to compete in another category, like paired figure skating. So they launched to be the first male paired figure skaters in the history of the world and got to get to the Olympics. But one was like, pretty boy Jimmy, the little blonde guy. He was like raised to do this. I see him as like the Canadian public companies. Like I went to Wharton, I know about M&As and IPOs and all these valuations, and it could be for a chicken farm or cannabis, it doesn't matter, but they came from the pedigree, they were raised to do this. And then you got these outlaws, like Chaz Michaels, who is pretty much ridiculous and doing whatever. Those are like the legacy operators, like gangster power by any means necessary, didn't have the resources and training, but they both do beautiful things. However, they bonded together to capture the dream, which was a very beautiful kind of sentiment to go on and like actually win the World Olympics as the first, not even ambiguously gay duo, but like blatantly awesome duo of skating. So when you look at some of these parallels, at least in my mind 3 months ago when they wanted this presentation topic, it was like right now everyone's just freaking dreaming. Dreams don't fucking happen unless you do something about it. If you have a great dream to do something, you better read the rules about what you're gonna do. Put a team together, have a plan. Just because this is cannabis doesn't mean you're gonna be a millionaire or a billionaire. I mean, I see companies that do hundreds of millions of revenue that are like losing money every month. Canadian public companies, MSOs, all of those. And even private companies. There's all these different tax regulations that you have to follow, not only in the United States where it's federally illegal, we can't deduct our business costs. Our EBITDA that should be like 5 million, it's like 1 million. So understanding all of these parameters, if you've got a dream, how to take a dream and a vision and make it something is what I love to help companies do, but I see that most companies fail. So they're always like dreaming, I could do this or that, and they don't have a focus. The focus for the companies is most important. So when we look at the global cannabis market, and it's constantly evolving, a couple more new colors there, it's happening time by time. When we're talking about like the entire US and global industry of legal cannabis last year, about $35 billion US in revenue, when you think that 88% of that was in the United States, which is federally illegal, and state by state, it's like we're almost different countries. You got Canada doing 90% as a legal medical and adult use industry. Interpol, nobody messed with them, no one's messed with Uruguay yet. And then the rest of the world, this is all of you. Medical, adult use, less than 1%. I mean, even Germany last year, almost 350 million in medical cannabis, that's freaking awesome. Helping patients have less suffering, healthcare's covering it, it's incredible. It's like testing the waters on a market, but Colorado, 6 million people, close to 3 billion in revenue. Germany, 90 million, like 350 million in revenue. We're all people and things are gonna start to change, especially as the rules start to allow to change. But when you're in the United States, like every little state is a country and I can't grow things in one place and move it to another. So it's super inefficient. I have a different God or government I have to serve in each place. Some states will allow hundreds of licenses, some will give 5. But getting market share in these new markets, just like international, it's a real estate land grab. Because commonly for your site master files or for your QA/QC programs, You have to have real estate that's compliant, that the owner will allow in a city that said yes, that's not too close to a daycare or a church, that's gonna have power and water and all of these different services. But real estate is one of the secrets to like finding these little places to go, because you could grow cannabis anywhere, it's a weed. We've grown cannabis in greenhouses all the way up in Alaska, all the way down to South Africa, middle of the world. You can do this anywhere, but how much is it gonna cost you to do it somewhere? How much environmental and social benefit is gonna happen there? And what are the tax treaties and regulations between countries from where the money comes from, where the money goes, how you bank it? These are things that are not as easy as most people think. Now the United States, you know, from Wisconsin, sorry, just in advance, not everyone in America is like you see on TV nowadays, you know. There's still some good ones left. We can still have women vote, they can have credit cards still, you know, there's still some things. Gays can still get married, you know, we'll check in on that in 4 years, fingers crossed. But with weed, no current federal bills, acts, attempts to do anything in the United States are gonna pass. Now it's really good for stock prices when it's like, oh, the MORE Act moved forward, great, not gonna fucking happen. So MORE Act, CARE, MACE, safe banking, like they're all needed. I'm not against any of that, but right now we have such a divided house. And when you think about like economy, linguist background, like economy is oikonomos from Greece. Like nomos are the rules or the laws, and oikos is the house. So the rules that govern the house is like what economy is. And our economy allows these little state right things, similar to the EU, but we don't have like weird sanctions where if one state does something naughty, we're gonna like remove them from SWIFT banking or something like that. That'd be interesting, actually. But when you're thinking about all these states, and when it started with a few, there's only a few holdouts. You know, we've got over 1,000 bills nearly to legalize in different programs. It's gonna happen. But we were the ones that caused this shit show around the world in the 30s with some of our corporations that were paper, oil, cotton. They're the ones who kind of worked together to make cannabis illegal just to go after hemp, which is, you know, we've only been able to do hemp in America since 2014, and that was a shit show of a program the first few years. But state by state, it's coming. Like California gonna do $5 billion in revenue this year, Colorado probably 3, Oregon and Washington $1.5 billion each. Some of these new states like New York, New Jersey. Coronavirus, we went from 10 adult use states to 20 because they're like tax revenue, jobs, I don't care. It's like this is gonna bring in so much more new economy, and it's the right thing to do like on a social justice standpoint. But we've gotten to be guinea pigs in each one of these states. Different departments of agriculture, departments of health telling us what we could do, what we couldn't do. We're trying to figure out that right thing, but we already figured out what do people like. And there are people that are different in Europe from like the things you like you like good bread. Americans don't like good bread because there's not any good bread in the country. I don't know how that's the case, but you know, there's different taste concerns in countries. When it comes to, it's not just flour anymore, it's not just hash with tobacco, but consumer packaged goods are changing the way that this industry is going to be. It's gotta have a barcode. So the companies of ours here that do soil to oil cultivation and manufacturing co-located, we don't sell wholesale pounds, 500 kilos here, 500 kilos there. Everything's in a single 1 gram, 3.5 gram, 7 gram package. Every edible is child safe. And then that's where you make the massive revenue. But what you can learn from the United States, what products are working and not when it comes to beverages and others. What will your countries allow in the future? Oh, you're gonna do a giant vape line in Europe. Well, Europe's based on the API and medical right now. Other than the Swiss pilot program, you couldn't even do a product really. So you have to know those rules and what you can do. So what can we learn from the United States and Canada? Long story there. Like to actually do this well. And like Jimmy, you'd say, it's like, if you can dream it, you can do it. Well, that's not actually the case. It takes tons of people to put this stuff together. Tens of millions of euros at times to do this stuff. And that's sometimes just to get started. So when you think of what products worked in America, what's worked from regulations, what pesticide testing, packaging, what were the problems we had? In a poll in Europe for adult use, the biggest concern is about child access. We've actually seen teen access go down and consumption go down in legal states because it's not cool anymore. Like in America, I could get shot for my country, I could buy a house, have a gun, get married, pay taxes, smoke cigarettes, buy porn. You can't rent a car until you're 25, but you can't drink beer, alcohol, or wine until you're 21. So then here it's like 18's different, 16's different for beer, but like drinking is so cool to teens in America because they can't do it. But then once it's like your parents are smoking weed and you're like, oh, it's not that cool anymore because my folks do it. But it still does happen. So no matter what you do in Europe, really good educational programs for like youth access, substance abuse education. You're an advocate in this industry. You're no longer just like, oh, I got a business. Everyone looks at what you do from your packaging, your labeling, the messaging that you have for this, you know, who you support from substance abuse education, the trainings that you're gonna do. So, so important. Also, like, you don't need pesticides to produce this. Even if you don't have to follow a standard, if you do like GMP or EU GMP or GACP for cultivation, you're already setting and like doing all of this risk mitigation. Less risk is better for the investment and you're higher likely to succeed. So do the things even if you don't have to do them right away, because it will not limit you from selling to another market. So, you know, I went over a little bit of this the other day, but internationally, the big problem with international medical cannabis, and as a medical cannabis patient myself, is that in the United States, doctors write recommendations. They don't write prescriptions for cannabis because that's through the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. They're a federal organization. This is federally illegal. The only prescriptions that doctors can do there are for like Epidex, Sativex, Dronabinol, Marinol, some of those synthetic cannabinoids that are all poison. But they write recommendations based, in some states, it's not everything. California, anything your doctor thinks cannabis could be helpful for, you can get a medical card. Like, I broke my wrist when I was 14 skateboarding, it hurts, I can't sleep. Oh, here's your medical card. Others, like, do you have a weird disease that I can barely pronounce? And 2 doctors that say you have it, okay, now you can have medical cannabis, but only 5% THC oil here or there. Like, each state's so, so different. But we need doctor education around the world. We've been stigmatizing this plant for so long. So no matter what you are or where you are, don't ever like go so flowery to say it's like cannabis cures this and that. Like cannabis has been shown to. And we need a lot more medical studies. And a big thing that happened through the Commission for Narcotic Drugs, the World Health Organization, and the UN, like rescheduled cannabis in December of 2020 to be similar to the US's Schedule 3, like has medical value, needs more research. In America, Schedule 1 narcotic, we're heroin. Cannabis is the exact same. No medical needs, no more study needed, just the devil. So internationally, cannabis isn't the devil anymore. It has medical efficacy, needs more studies. If we change that in the United States, IRC 280E, that tax code that really kills our industry, goes away overnight, because that's only applicable to Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 narcotics. When you see that happen by every single MSO that's in the United States on a public company standpoint, but we've got to do education, we've got to get more doctors understanding the needs for this and trying this and using this. That's why patient counts are so, so low. Adult use is starting, you know, it's happening in Canada, happening in America, happening in Uruguay. Other places in Europe are starting to allow this. Why hasn't it happened yet? And one of the big issues here is standing in Germany. Deutschland, biggest GDP in the EU. Fucking awesome, almost what, 4 trillion? Pretty gangster. Almost 90 million people, like what you do here, Europe will follow. And now that you're not competing with the UK so much, like the whole Brexit thing, we're not gonna get into that. But Germany, you have the ability to be like the trendsetter, like the prettiest girl at the bar, if you figure this out right. Are you going to? Most likely not. Because, bummer. It's not your fault, it's just who your parents are, AKA the EU. So we've got all of these international drug compacts that Bob Hoban and others talked about yesterday. The Single Treaty, 1961 from the United Nations on Psychotropic Substances, Indian Pharmacies Act, all of these different things. Canada's in blatant violation of that. Uruguay's in blatant violation of that. All of the medical programs under those are doing compassionate use programs, which means it can only be medical API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, flour, oil. Compounding happens in pharmacies. You're not selling cookies or vape cartridges. You know, you can do Part A, Part B, you know, standardization. But when we think about like, what are all of these things going to be? These are a lot of questions that we normally typically try to figure out and answer. But the issue with Germany is that you're in the EU, and the EU has different sanctions and provisions from member nations. So you could pretty much do this to the UN. Everyone's doing that right now, no one's doing shit, minus Russia, but that's a different thing. Also very unfortunate. But then you're also gonna have to think of what's gonna happen not only in your country, in some of the cantons, like in Switzerland, or within certain municipalities and what's gonna happen. And the easiest way they see to do this is through like the home grow, which as a farmer and being in this space, like if something's legal, people should be able to grow it. Are people gonna make moonshine? Yeah. Are people gonna make extra beer and sell it? Yeah. Is it gonna be significant? Abso-fucking-lutely not. It's gonna be like this much. How many, like, you all could brew beer right now and brew wine. How many people have carboys at home, wash those, put the priming sugar in? You know, yeah, not many, but how many people had wine last night? We're lazy. Cannabis is, it takes 4 to 6 months to grow it, you gotta dry it, you gotta cure it, you got all those things, like, and it's great that people do it, and it's medicine even growing it, seeing a plant and helping that. I've seen that massively helpful for veterans. But if we legalize it that way, it's gonna start a program of more illicit market, and then it's gonna be harder to rail that in later. So if they do the right thing early, it's gonna be very, very nice. When we think about, I threw on the Team America World Police on this one too, just, you know, America. But we've got stuff we gotta deal with like the United Nations, the Commission for Narcotic Drugs, the World Health Organization, the EU then with Europol, oh, we got Interpol, we got all this money sitting up in London that can't do shit right now, even though they went and like raped and pillaged the world for like half a 1,000 years, and then now have all this wealth sitting there that they can't actually invest into like things because of the Proceeds of Foreign Crimes Act from 2002. They can't even invest into real estate in America that we leased to a cannabis company. So they can only invest certain proceeds into like other legal things that are legal in their country, which is mostly CBD type things. But when you think about all these regulators and things you have to worry about, not that Team America is a regulator, but you know, they like to act like it. But since we were the dickheads that did this whole thing internationally, we're not gonna be the first to say like, we're sorry. Cannabis should have never been illegal. Well, we're gonna do this right. We're gonna take the IP, and companies will be leaders from the US in what they've done, but we will be one of the latest to adopt this. And always that crystal ball question, how many years until federal legalization in the United States? 5 to 9 years? I've been saying for 5 to 9 years. And based on who our last president was, which he shall not be named, nothing's gonna happen. Current administration, just a great bill from Biden the other day to actually like take certain people out of jail, but not putting more new people in there. International Narcotics Control Board is definitely pissed about everything that's going on, especially when it comes to like all these vape cartridges, new cannabinoids, people doing isolates, isolating something from nature versus just like full distillates. If you isolate something from nature and you try to make an API, that's $562 million of clinical trials to get a standardized drug. Even if I took beta carotene out of a carrot and I was gonna make a supplement or something for that or a pharmaceutical drug, $500 million just to do that. So always use the word distillate, not isolate. They're just, yeah, we're in this gray area where there's all this new learning, all this new science, but there's no regulators really cracking down other than on the blatantly illicit market. And when you're thinking about what are the possibilities in this place, like are people gonna like weed in Europe? It's gonna be a whole different rollout for how you live here. But when you're thinking 467 billion in 2022 in alcohol sales, that's almost €500 billion. And normally that'd be like a lot more, but like the dollar and the euro, you know, about the same right now, which is awesome for us, sorry for you, you know. Normally that'd be like, I'm like, oh God, 467 billion euros. Oh my God, it's like $650 million. Oh my God, it's the same now. But that's a huge market share, and that's on something that's poison. We allow alcohol, but we don't allow cannabis. Anybody seen a drunk person and a stoned person? I'm not saying one's better than the other, but damn, the problems that alcohol causes to society over what cannabis like helps to like treat and make better. Alcohol, and then you've got tobacco, almost $250 billion a year. And smoking's cool here, it's not in America anymore. It's really a bummer, but like all of these new things, Juul got banned by the FDA. Like those little vape cartridge type things. Like tobacco is still this weird thing. It built our country, but also like kind of killing the country. When you think about this market share and what's happened in Colorado, most of our data, and there's a lot of data companies out there, but long term we project that there's going to be $1 billion in revenue from every million people for cannabis. And for every dollar spent on cannabis, there's about $5 of velocity of capital. The real estate, the consulting, the legal, the packaging, the electricity, the plumbers putting in things, light manufacturers in China, like, you buy cannabis, you're contributing to this whole other industry. So even if we say Colorado's doing $3 billion in revenue, we're probably doing like 12 billion of additional economy, 15 billion. What would that look like here? Because illicit cannabis exists here now. It's just not being taxed, tested, regulated. That's what creates the problems with this. Massive opportunity. This will be the second largest adult use market in the world within 5 to 10 years, closer to the 10-year side. When you think about, thanks Gianna for some slide, but the EU with all of the medical, it's really been happening well. Portugal did something awesome by decriminalizing drugs back in the day. Not only did it allow you to buy a lot of fake drugs in Lisbon on accident, it happens whenever there's like, oh, people think that drugs are legalized, but there's a big difference between decriminalization, legalization, rescheduling, descheduling, but the medical programs have been starting here, but mostly have let you down as businesses because we don't have tons of doctors writing prescriptions all over the place that create the massive fucking demand that we need to actually fuel these businesses. That's why Canopy, Aurora, all of these companies that went to take over the globe, same time we were working, they spent so much money on things that thought they would generate revenues and returns 2-3 years out. Those were all 4 to 7 to 10-year plans, and they just got burned like short squeezes. When we think about then adult use in Europe, kind of awesome. You got the Netherlands, coffee house thing since the 70s. That's gone through many iterations. It's not actually even legal for non-residents to purchase there. Big shout out to the Dutch though, because without them and their breeding back in the 70s, we wouldn't have a lot of the genetics that we have. And it's sad to see those companies aren't massively profitable like Driscoll's right now, because they didn't do brand licensing and genetics breeding right stuff. But the Netherlands had their program, and you've got has the program and the weed experiment to allow 10 to produce for 78 coffee houses, a few more. There's over 500 coffee houses in the Netherlands. Each one on average does 1.7 million euros a year. I mean, pretty significant, and it's in a country that's not legal for that. Spain has their club model, with the medical club model. Also gray area ambiguity, but it's proliferating, it's starting more and more. Luxembourg introduced full legalization, all of that's gotten shot down and how that's gonna happen. Germany, how we're gonna do it, awesome, but way to go Otto, way to go Greens, the social democrat, everyone who kind of made that happen, fucking gangster to say that this is amazing. I'm surprised Germany was first. I figured Malta would be. You're just the big one that everyone's gonna look at. Portugal, it's not legalized, it's decriminalized, and that's all drugs, and they've had so fewer drug problems with all drugs in their country because they treat it as like an illness, and they help people instead of put them in prison, take away their children. It's a really good model of drug control. Malta's got that on their books, and Switzerland has this pilot program for 5,000 people to consume in little club settings, but they allow products, not just flour and oil. It's the same thing in the Netherlands, the weed experiment, it was only flour. They didn't have the edibles plan yet. We were gonna do Netherlands 1.0, 2.0, similar to Canada. But these are the countries to really look at and pull things that worked from some of the others, but Germany's got a lot of work ahead. So always I'll say, it's to get into this thing, if you want to capture the dream, you gotta know the rules to play the game. There's a lot of reading to do in a lot of languages, but the main thing, you wouldn't go to a casino with $1 million and go play blackjack if you didn't understand the rules or how you would double down on things, or I don't gamble, I think it's a tax on people that are bad at math, but you wouldn't go and put a bunch of money down and do that. Also, gambling legal? Kind of crazy to me too. And gambling hates cannabis because we don't make good gamblers. We get distracted and we're not yeah baby, woo, getting hammered. That's why there's been so many problems in Las Vegas getting this legal on the strip. But when you know the rules of what's the law allow, what are the standards I have to follow, what are the outside industry things that I need, can I even do my business plan where I'm thinking about doing that business plan? Does this country allow it? Just because you have the idea that you're gonna get an extraction license in Portugal and make vape pens and sell them all over the world, well, not necessarily gonna happen, unless it's a medical device, compounded and so forth. But it's always from almost Hindi mythology of multiple different gods, and you gotta serve them all. It's not just Christian Santa Claus God, just one dude, keep him happy. You got national, international law, your federal, your state or country, municipalities or counties, all the way down to little boroughs and burgermeisters. And it's gotta be compliant, top down, bottom up. And that's not just cannabis laws. The biggest thing I see, having done thousands of applications in businesses, winning the license is, I focus on, because it's number one. But getting a license to a building permit, a certificate of occupancy, and starting the business, that's capital raising, pre-construction, site planning, engineering, expensive and time. And little things now, coronavirus has changed so many things for supply chains. Everything you're gonna do is gonna right now be 2 times as much money and take twice as long. So in the past, we used to just do new buildings for everything, but retrofits are really starting to be much more important. Cannabis stocks are as low as they've ever been right now. Some of them are undervalued, some of them are still overvalued, but on a public or private standpoint, this industry, we're out of gas, even though we're doing 35 billion in rev and all of this services. I can't get traditional bank loans, I can't get other things. So since we don't have institutional capital, how you raise private capital, how you deal with public capital, we manage funds, do a lot of SPVs. I've seen over $1 billion of capital deployed in this space, some good, some bad. But now, more than ever, is like if you're thinking about getting into this, starting a business, we have a very short timeline, and that's like within the next 10 years that this is all established. Whoever gets those first early market positions, those are the ones that are going to get the exits that we hope for. A lot of them will stop though, costs are really high, we have weird tax provisions, people are trying to figure out R&D and things on things that are already known. Big advice, just like Bob said, this is an agricultural commodity, this is a value-added product from consumer packaged goods, supplements. Don't just think you're reinventing the wheel on everything. You're not gonna come up with some amazing new way of cultivation. The fucking Dutch with their greenhouses and the Venlos have figured all this out a long time before. Use their technology. Don't develop a new LED light that you think is gonna do this magic shit, and no. Agriculture, been around for like what, 10,000-ish years, been working pretty well for us. Pull from that. You know, indoor, I've been trying to put indoor out of business for over a decade. It's so environmentally catastrophic. It's cheaper to build big four-season hybrid greenhouses that can still be GACP and GMP, and outdoors where all oil will come from in the future. Tons of due diligence is needed if you're an investor or an operator. Do your homework before you jump into this. If you don't, you will be lost and all of your dreams will not happen. They will be nightmares and you'll work at McDonald's someday. We've got more startups than we've ever seen. They're failing. How many new companies are here this year that weren't here last year, the year before that? We have to literally be mindful of that. When you've got these companies going public and thinking they're gonna take over the world, be careful. Anyone can write a good press release, and that's where we are right now in Publix. That's not true value, but remember, a lot of those dominate market share, and you got new IPOs that are happening here. Hemp, just the last thing, don't go play with the Woodland Fairies after, you know, he was kicked out of the Olympics. That's Delta 8, that's CBD. Novel cannabinoid right now, hemp, there's industrial hemp, and you've got novel cannabinoid extraction. Almost a $2 billion side in CBD. And CBD, very good medicinal compound, awesome. 90-95% snake oil garbage industry being sold in gas stations. Once hemp didn't make them billions of dollars, and then CBD market bottomed out, what new cannabinoid can I do with this license? And then Delta 8, Delta 9, THCV, all these others, they'll all be scheduled similar to heroin in the United States in this next year, even though some farm bill stuff's happened. So don't just jump on random bandwagons. Main thing, just gotta show a panda at the end. If you practice and you do your fucking homework, you have the possibility of capturing the dream, but in this room, you've got less than a 1% chance of doing that on your own. So like, who's here, left, right of you? Don't walk by people, look them in the eye. Like, your partners, your future investors, they're all here and we're in this together, and we only have so long to put this together right before like this whole industry is pretty much like dominated by a bunch of shitbag assholes. Philip Morris, all the others, they're gonna buy a lot of our companies, it's great, but if we embed good ethos into the company now, we can literally change the world. It's the most important thing we could be doing with our lifetime, with your capital, with your money, with your minds. Everything else is boring and established, but this is revolutionary what we get to do at this time. Thank you, Berlin.